what's really, really important for families and for individuals going through this is that that's the whole point of therapy, is to what's gone well this week, what are you working on, or this month, and what, walking through these scenarios. So, to play devil's advocate, you have this family that comes to us, and the question is, my child's been in therapy. She's very resistant. She doesn't want to do these games. She doesn't want to do these goals. She shuts down. I'm at a loss. And this is where silent goals come into play. This is where parents set up the world. And an example is you're going to the birthday party that you're talking about, or a party in general, or a gathering. And rather than the child being actively involved in the preparation, the parent will subtly say things like, hey, we're going to, so and so's party. It's at this particular roller rink. Let's go check it out. Like this weekend, let's go check it out. This happened recently with a pottery party for a 13-year-old. They were doing color me mine type stuff where they're coloring the pottery and painting it. And the party was for one of their friends, like in 2 weeks. But couple weeks before, the parents said, hey, let's go check out the place. Let's go. It's Saturday afternoon. We don't have a lot of plans. They went themselves. The child got very familiar with the location, picked out some of the things that she wanted to paint now and maybe at her friend's birthday party, and it got used to that. And so by the time the party comes along, she's already been there. Maybe they pick up a friend and they go in with a friend. So it's all of this preparing in the background that can occur without the child being, oh my gosh, I need to do this. Also, there's different strategies for a more active approach to help with preparing. I call it like SM roadmaps. What is that roadmap of that social communication opportunity? The first thing that's going to happen, the second thing, the third thing. Of course, you can't always predict, but this is where you're going to go. These are the things that would happen. I need to pick out my pottery. Maybe I get there early, bring a friend. I sit with a friend. What are some common questions that somebody could ask me? What are questions that I could ask? Sandwich questions, action plans. The point I'm making is this preparing isn't just where are we going. It's the roadmap of what occurs in that scenario. So the child or the teen is really prepared for that. And often with my older kids that I work with, teens, and even the adults we work with, they write it out step by step. And the reason I call it a roadmap is it's similar to a roadmap. It's like step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, like stop 1, stop 2, stop 3, almost like a GPS. And so they create these roadmaps. They have the worksheets they work on, and that helps with preparing. There's a nonchalant way to prepare as well, and that's when you're driving to Aunt Sally's house. You may have a resistant child, but in the car you talk about, all right, we're going to Aunt Sally's, and you talk in general to all the kids in the car, or just even your spouse or partner. What do you think Aunt Sally's going to ask us? And so nonchalantly, silently, I call it silent goals, that we talk about the questions that could be asked. We talk about, what could we ask? And so it's done in a subtle manner. Behind the scenes, we may tell Aunt Sally and Uncle Bill, hey, give so-and-so time to warm up. Don't ask questions right away. But if you're going to ask questions, here's 3 types of questions to ask. And what you're doing is you're creating these opportunities behind the scenes as a way to help your child prepare, because maybe you are doing a common question goal or a common question game, or you're creating those action plans. Who's going to be there? What can they ask? What's your answer? What could you ask? And based on the stage of social communication is how that is implemented. All the different stages. Any thoughts on that? Any comments on that?
No, I just think that many times when we work with people, we go into scenarios and families feel that, okay, the most that the more exposure that we have, the better. And that's true, but it's actually the preparation that happens before the exposures that are probably the most effective part. Is us, as parents, listening and learning about our experiences, and maybe going into these future experiences that much more prepared. And so I think, as you're saying, like, it might not be that the child is super prepared in terms of having this in an, back and forth conversation, unless they're ready for that and they're motivated and they want to talk through it. Because I have many teens and tweens that I work with, and actually young adults, that are very much on that front seat, and they're going through these things, and we're role playing in sessions so that they're prepared. And actually even younger children too, if they're really motivated. So I'm not saying that we're not fully in that driver's seat with them, but like you mentioned, for those kids that maybe experience more of those higher expectations, it's really the what's happening behind the scene. And sometimes, in addition to, like, let's say driving to Aunt Sally's, I might actually say another level of preparing might be calling Aunt Sally ahead of time and saying, hey, by the way, we're going to like nonchalantly just say, what could some questions be that maybe Aunt Sally and Uncle Bill might ask us? And that way, when we go, maybe Aunt Sally and Uncle Bill know that. And so they're actually asking purposely, but the child just thinks it's, just by chance because they kind of prepared that in the car. So sometimes I might even do even more preparing by having, whether it's extended family, teachers, birthday party, peers, all these things, kind of having them behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, no, I think that when we talk about, setting the world up for the child, the silent goals, it's a combination often of silent goals, more or less based on that child's expectation and readiness. But there's so many kids, young children, where we're setting up worlds. We're playing the common question game. We're playing different interviews and question answer games or board games, or we're doing the guess who and the guess characters for younger kids, or the older kids are doing their assignments of interview questions, or they're doing the big 5 words, or has head up, eye contact, smile, say hi, whatever the big 5 word is. There's countless goals. There's countless games. It's how do we put that together for that individual based on their whys, because certain kids based on their whys will do better with certain strategies and interventions and how parents question and when. And that leads us to the V part, the visuals, whether it's a restaurant, creating the menu, having the menu on your phone, knowing in advance, again, preparing. But by having a visual, you're minimizing the need to think and process, visual processing. It's very interesting. Some of the research we did showed that visual processing was affected in kids with SM from even like a sensory standpoint and an anxiety standpoint. By having that script, by having that visual, it really does lower their anxiety because it allows for the predictability.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about some of the ways you use them in your practice and set them kids up with that,
Yeah.
and
So,
parents.
yeah, well, I think before we talk about how we utilize it, just I want everyone to kind of visualize, many times when I talk about visual processing, there's so many times where parents will say, we did this, this, and this, and this didn't go as well, but this other thing went well. And I'll say, okay, well, let's take a pause, for the thing that didn't go as well. Walk me through what you did. Did you prepare ahead of time? Yeah, we did. Of course, we talked about it. And I'll say, okay, well, we talked about it, but did we write down the questions? And then I would say like 8 out of 10 times, most of the time, parents are like, no, I guess we didn't write it down, but we did talk about it. And I'll always emphasize the importance of seeing that visual. Seeing it means so much because, like you're saying, the visual processing piece is a huge component. And many times I'll kind of describe it's almost like when you're going to a restaurant and you're looking over the menu, and let's say you want a chicken Caesar salad, and you look at the menu and you're constantly like, okay, I'm gonna get a chicken Caesar salad, and then the waiter comes up and you're having a conversation, let's say with your friend, and the waiter looks at you and goes like, what do you want? And then you're like, oh wait, 1 minute, and then you like look back at the menu and you're like, oh, chicken Caesar salad, right? That happens all the time. So many people, that happens to me all the time. And it's not even because my anxiety is so high, it's just my processing is so low because I'm having a conversation, I got distracted. And so that visual piece really squashes all of that time to think and process. So the visual is really important. But I think one example or some examples that I do in session, for a younger child, like you're mentioning, it could be if we're thinking of a restaurant, maybe making fun visuals, of all the different items that they might want at a restaurant. So whether it's a child who goes to the same restaurant over and over and they laminate, a piece of paper that has their chicken fingers or their French fries and their chocolate milk, or whether it's a teen that maybe prepares by putting it on their phone in their notepad or their notes app, or maybe it's going into a store and writing down a few items that you're looking for. And for a younger child, maybe that's finding a fun scavenger hunt and they're looking for, different items. And so, or for an older child, again, maybe they put it in their phone. So we're really seeing these visuals as we're experiencing these exposures. And of course, we'll talk about that in session. Like sometimes, especially for my teens who maybe experience more of that heightened self-consciousness, or it's starting to impact their self-esteem, they might not want more attention on them and they might feel like, oh, if I'm holding up, a list here, that might draw more attention. So I might say, okay, well, let's talk about this. Could we make a visual? I mean, even if we're looking at it in the car or we're looking at it right before the exposure, can we at least see something so that way we're going in even more prepared? So there's obviously ways that we can tweak it. I'm not saying we're going to be carrying around a script with us for the rest of our life, but there is a component of seeing a visual that's really helpful. And other components too could be maybe going to a get together, right? So it's March now. Maybe there's a spring break going on, and maybe there's family that we're visiting in Florida, and we don't know what people might ask. And so maybe we make a visual, fun questions people might ask us, and we write down our answers, of course, so that way we're even more prepared. So there's so many ways that we can make visuals in some of the exposures that we do, but those are some examples that I could think of.